Thank you for being here with us on From the South. My name is Regan Devines. Firstly, we go to Guatemala, where the president, Otto Perez Molina, has turned himself in after an arrest warrant was issued against him on Wednesday. Perez Molina had finally submitted his resignation overnight, following Congress's decision to strip him of his immunity. A federal judge had also issued a travel ban against Perez Molina to prevent him from fleeing the country. The president insisted in his letter of resignation that he is innocent. His press office said that the Congress's decision was influenced by the fact that elections are this coming Sunday.
Esperamos que esto siga mejorando y que le puedan brindar más y mejor seguridad
a group of Guatemalans gathered in front of the government palace to celebrate the president's resignation. Thousands had been flooding the streets demanding this for weeks. Although they are happy for the final result, they are conscious that this is a first step. And President Perez Molina had been in office since 2012. His government was shaken by a massive corruption scandal that led to the resignations of many of his cabinet members and other high-ranking officials. The corruption scheme, known as La Línea, or the Line, involved bribing business people in exchange for tax cuts, and the monetary bribes were funneled to private accounts owned by top officials. The scandal also caused hundreds of thousands of citizens to repeatedly take to the streets to protest against corruption and to demand the president's resignation. And while all this was happening with Perez Molina, former Vice President Roxana Baldetti was being moved to a former prison. Baldetti was arrested on August 21st on the same charges Perez now faces. She had resigned in May for her involvement in the La Línea corruption scheme. She was moved Wednesday night to Santa Teresa prison for women from the military prison of Matamoros, known for its luxury facilities. One of the candidates running for the presidential elections is a former First Lady who divorced her husband to be allowed to run for presidency 4 years ago. Sandra Torres, then married to President Alvaro Colom, served as Guatemala's First Lady from 2008 to 2011. After his ruling, they got divorced to circumvent a constitutional ban on close relatives running for the presidency. However, the move backfired with a court ruling her candidacy still violated the Constitution. Now she's running for presidency with the center-left National Unity for Hope Party, which was ousted by Perez Molina. Surveys placed her third behind frontrunners Manuel Baldizon and Jimmy Morales. Moving on now to Colombia, where President Juan Manuel Santos is still seeking international support in the border crisis with Venezuela. He visited Cucuta at the border with Venezuela and invited diplomats to visit the zone so that they could hear from Colombians being deported themselves. Santos held a public council of ministers attended by special guests, such as ambassadors and representatives of international agencies. This after his call for a meeting of foreign ministers at the OAS had failed.
The Venezuelan government says that smuggling and the mafias that control it has generated a lot of problems, and it is possible that that may be true. That is the truth indeed, but it's the same for us, and we are most interested in harassing the smuggling gangs that really damage us.
We now go to our correspondent, Natalia Margarita in Colombia. Natalia has an update on the increasing conflict that the government is facing, with thousands of angry campesinos demanding compliance of agreements that were signed 2 years ago.
It was 2013 when, in an attempt to bring to an end a massive agrarian strike, the government committed to rural development. Almost 2 years have passed, and rural leaders say the government has failed to comply with 99% of the agreements.
Even one potato has been planted, but instead the big industry, the monoculture plantations, for instance, in Orinoquia region have been advancing. The state budget seemed to be available for those monocultures.
According to this year's agrarian census, the poverty rate in Colombia's countryside is around 45%. Less than 10% of the rural population have received technical assistance, and over 80% lack farming equipment.
There is an evident displacement to this country's big cities that is swelling the poorer regions. People are leaving, seeking employment opportunities. We even have communities in which very few inhabited houses are left, as many people have been fleeing.
Land concentration has always been at the core of Colombia's armed and social conflict. Now the agrarian census has revealed that little had changed. 0.4% are the owners of over 40% of the rural lands.
As many people are fearing to lose the small piece of land that they have left, they are selling it to the best bidder. But also the multinationals are sending their people to threat and put pressure so that they can buy their lands. That means that we are being displaced from all sides.
Rural leaders say that the government is favoring the big companies in terms of opportunities and land concessions, something they find contradictory with the peace process underway in Havana.
The government is just interested in the laying down of arms by the FARC. Meanwhile, it continues to criminalize social protest, to monopolize land, to take control of the hydrocarbons and mineral resources in general, all the wealth in order to give it away to their transnational ally.
Meanwhile, for the next year, the government is planning to reduce the budget for rural development in a 52%, something that have triggered even further criticism. Natalia Margarita, Telesur, Bogotá, Colombia.
And we are now going to our correspondent in Guatemala, Jorge Hastoso, who has an update for us there. Jorge, can you hear me?
Yes, Cody, I can.
Thank you so much, Jorge. Firstly, we'd like to ask you, President Perez Molina has now appeared in court, accused of fraud, illicit association, and corruption. Tell us more about the latest developments and what is likely to happen to him there.
Well, at this very moment, he's still hearing the charges of corruption. He is precisely in a formal tribunal, in a federal tribunal. Then, at the very same time, he's still, even though last night he has presented a letter of resignation to the presidency, he's still officially the president of Guatemala until this afternoon Congress is going to accept the letter of resignation, and at the very same moment there's going to swear in his replacement, the Vice President Maldonado. So he is facing the charges at this very moment still with the title of president. What is going on, according to what the Attorney General seems that is going to act, he's going to ask to be removed, of course, of his presidency, and probably he's going to be arrested and detained. So at this very moment, it's very fluid, the situation. A president in charge, in command, is in president still having that title, is for the first time ever in the history of Guatemala being charged officially of charges of corruption, and at the very same time, a vice president is, the members of the Congress are still arriving, and in about a few minutes, or probably in the next couple of hours, he's going to be officially sworn in as probably the next vice president. The term of President Molina is ending on January 14th, so the new President Maldonado is going to be there for only that part of the finalizing of the term.
Jorge, what is likely to happen to the president if he is found guilty?
What is taking place with his ex-vice president, Roxana Valdetti, that, by the way, she has been transferred to a regular prison for women called Santa Teresa last night. So last night she spent for the first time a night with the rest of the inmates of a regular prison. So all the analysts are saying that the process is going to be extremely long, and the commission, or the International Commission of Impunity in Guatemala, called CICIG from the United Nations, are telling that the proofs are really very, very strong. So it's extremely difficult that he's going to get away with murder in this case. And that anyway, even the Attorney General agrees that the process is going to take very long time, that his guilt has to be proven. So we are starting to be in a terrain of speculation, but most probably it's going to be sentenced to X amount of years in jail.
Thank you so much, Jorge. Much appreciated. Thanks for taking the time out to speak with us today. We'll catch up with you a bit later on.
Thank you, Cody.
We continue now to Mexico, where President Enrique Peña Nieto delivered his State of the Union address. The president weighed in on violence and corruption afflicting the nation whilst vowing to not raise taxes. Peña Nieto was elected in 2012 to a 6-year term, promising robust economic growth via economic reforms and to tame violent crime following years of drug war mayhem. But crime and violence are on the rise, as well as corruption. His government has been widely affected by the escape of drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman from jail, also the unsolved case of the 43 missing Ayotzinapa students, as well as other scandals involving multi-million-dollar homes acquired under questionable circumstances.
Our country was profoundly hurt by a series of unfortunate incidents. The incident of Iguala, the escape at the high-security prison. They are reminders of situations of violence, crime, and the weakness of the rule of law. They are also signs of conflicting interests that have also involved the head of government, as well as complaints of corruption in municipalities, states, and federally, and in some cases in the private sector, have generated annoyance, outrage in Mexican society.
The justice system in Mexico's violence-ravaged state of Guerrero has collapsed. This is the conclusion made by a damning report from New York-based advocacy group Open Society of Justice Initiative. They accused Mexican police investigators of widely using torture tactics on suspects. They said this is due to negligence, impunity, and an inability to efficiently investigate crime. They also accused many elements of the police force of being connected to organized crime.
We see in this report that many elements of the police force are linked to organized crime, that many prosecutors don't have the technical capacity to investigate crime without using methods like torture, that the judiciary body in Guerrero State is not sufficiently independent from the executive and prosecutors.
A delegation of the Center for Justice and International Law visited Honduras to evaluate the conditions of human rights defenders and journalists, and according to the experts, the country is a very dangerous environment.
According to a delegation of the Center for Justice and International Law that visited Honduras, the situation of human rights defenders and journalists is still very dangerous.
What the law says is that when there is a crime against a human rights defender or a journalist, there has to be an immediate investigation, but until this moment, the practice has been insufficient. There are many accusations in the Inter-American Court of environmentalists assassinated, but if we analysed it, which cases have been sent to trial and which ones have a verdict, we're talking of less than 2%.
The National Congress approved in July a law for the protection of journalists and human rights defenders, but the law has yet to be put into practice.
Why it's been so long for the authorities of our country to understand that this is their urgent obligation to investigate and sanction so that the victims, the survivors, and the families have some hope, that they won't receive the answer that nothing happened, that they presented a claim in the national institutions but had to go later to international ones for answers.
The lack of investigation and real protection that allows human rights defenders and journalists to do their jobs is urgent in Honduras, where in the last 10 years, 40 journalists have been killed and there has been no investigation into any of these cases. Gerardo Torres, Telesur, Central America.
Authorities in the United States, Mexico, Guatemala, and El Salvador have arrested 36 suspects in an international sweep of human smugglers who sent scores of people from Central America towards the United States. In total, 17 arrests were made in El Salvador, 7 in Guatemala, and 12 in Mexico. The 4 countries came together for Operation Lucero. The mass arrest follows renewed efforts from the countries to tackle its human trafficking menace, which saw tens of thousands of undocumented migrants reach the United States last year.
The 3 countries operated simultaneously: Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico. This was programmed from the start that we're going to simultaneously hit traffickers, which were uncovering these 3 countries following investigations here in El Salvador.
Coming up next, Greeks are tired of the political situation and believe the new elections are unnecessary. Lots more after the break.
Latin America and the world in our programs. Telesur Reports, The Real USA, the stories behind the tweets. Ataman, Lives, Know Your Body, Open Files. Exposing the conflicts that affect our people. Compelling personal stories and the most controversial events. See it all on telesurtv.net in English. Telesur. Wherever the news, you'll be there. An insight into Africa today. With Bill Fletcher. The Global African. Only on telesurtv.net in English. Wherever the news, you'll be there. The truth behind the power. We lift the lid on some of the world's most ruthless figures. Open File. Only on telesurtv.net in English. Wherever the news, you'll be there.
Welcome back. Many considered it a trick at the expense of hundreds of refugees when Hungary's Keleti train station in Budapest was reopened, allowing the refugees to board trains that they assumed were heading to Western Europe. However, it all became clear when the train stopped at one of Hungary's refugee camps, and police told the refugees to evacuate the trains and to board buses. They were then driven to the camps. One refugee said that it looked as though the train was headed to Germany, and that this was a trick by the government, the police, and the train station. And this was the scene inside the Keleti train station after officials reopened it for travel to refugees. Many awaited trains in what they believed would have been transport out of Budapest and into neighboring European cities. The numbers of refugees seeking a new home in Europe seems to be increasing daily, and Hungarian authorities have been attempting to curb the unregulated entrance and exit by refugees, although the country's methods have come under scrutiny. And in Libya, over 100 refugees were detained after attempting to cross the Mediterranean Sea into Europe. Reports are that the refugees of various nationalities were on an inflatable dinghy. They were then taken to the Tripoli Marine Base so that they could be identified and their respective embassies contacted. This as the region cracks down on human trafficking, refugee deaths at sea, and unregulated entry into other countries.
Therefore, I call on all EU leaders to redouble their efforts when it comes to solidarity with the members who face this unprecedented migratory wave. Accepting more refugees is not the only, but an important gesture of real solidarity. Fair distribution of at least 100,000 refugees among the EU states is what, in fact, we need today.
European leaders most affected by the influx of refugees across their countries' territories continue to call for an even distribution of refugees among EU nations. This was the call by Serbian Prime Minister Alexander Vučić and the Bavarian State Minister for European Affairs, Peter Merk, as they toured the Kanjiza camp in northern Serbia. The camp currently supports about 250 refugees, providing them with food and water. The leaders also said they will assist only those seeking refuge from war and persecution, not those looking to improve their economic lives. A UN report reveals that some 13 million children are unable to continue school because of Middle East conflicts. The report focuses on the negative impact that conflicts have had on 6 countries and the territories across the region, namely Syria, Iraq, Libya, the Palestinian territories, Sudan, and Yemen. In 2014, UNICEF had documented 214 attacks on schools in those regions where students and teachers have come under direct fire. Classrooms have been used as makeshift bomb shelters, and the children have had to cross active front lines just to take their exams. A new poll in Greece puts Syriza behind its main conservative rivals for the first time since former Premier Alexis Tsipras resigned. The survey also suggests that Tsipras, now less popular than conservative leader Evangelos Memamarakis. A different poll released also on Wednesday showed Syriza slightly ahead of New Democracy. Athens residents believe the upcoming snap elections on September 20th are unnecessary, and that political parties should show maturity by working together to get the country's to get the country through its crisis.
As a Greek citizen, I am sick and tired of listening to lies. Since 1974, all we are listening to is fairy tales. There is nothing more to say. I would like to see them working together, to cooperate, because the Greek people are in a dire situation. There is a large unemployment. We are faced with very serious problems.
Wednesday's bombing of a Shiite mosque in the Yemeni capital, Sana'a, killed 32 people and wounded 92. Those are the updated figures by authorities. A Sunni extremist blew himself up inside the mosque and a car bomb was detonated outside shortly thereafter. This is the latest attack on Shiite targets by Sunni rebels. An apostolic Christian county clerk faces a contempt of court charge for refusing to issue a marriage license to a same-sex couple. The clerk, Kim Davis is her name, said that since the Supreme Court ruled in favor of same-sex marriages, she has refused to issue licenses to either straight or gay couples, citing her religious beliefs. Protesters for and against the clerk's decision gathered outside the courthouse to express their views.
Should take into consideration that when she was elected for this job, she had a job description, and in that job description did not include this, what we're arguing about today. Now, everybody has rights. Why pick on the Christians? Why weren't they going 30 minutes up the road or down the road where they can get this same piece of paper signed?
Peru has become a very attractive destination for many foreigners that find this a place to see and live. More on this in the next segment.
Hace 2 años, Carlos llegó a Perú junto con su esposa Ana.
2 years ago, Carlos arrived at Peru with his wife, Ana, looking for a new life, due to the current economic crisis lived in his native Spain. Here, they have managed to open a library in the Bohemian district of Barranco, La Libre, where they offer books from the independent sector and promote discussions and cultural activities. Peru has become a receiver of immigrants that arrive to work each year from different places of the world. The workers' reception has increased at 79% from 2004 to 2014. Official statistics reveal that only in the past May, almost 5,000 foreigners entered the country. Nonetheless, migration can be a very hard road for foreigners that decide to settle in Peru. The Venezuelan Carmen Guzman has been in Peru for 5 years, and although her 4 children have the Peruvian nationality, she could be expelled due to a legalization that specialists consider obsolete. This isn't the only case. Activists ask for the updating of this traditionalist bill, which is focused on national security, that leaves in a very vulnerable state those who plan to start a life in the country.
Chung Mong-joon, the South Korean FIFA presidential candidate, is accusing the Asian Football Confederation of election fraud in their support of rival candidate Frenchman Michel Platini. Mong-joon said Platini should not even be a candidate based on his history with FIFA and his relationship with Sepp Blatter. Mong-joon said that the AFC's president Sheikh Salman bin Ibrahim Al Khalifa has publicly supported Platini, having sent unsolicited letters to almost every AFC member to garner their support for Platini. Finally, this afternoon, sexual violence against women is a big problem in many parts of Africa. In addition, women are unable to negotiate safe sex practices with their abusers. However, in Somalia, women are preparing themselves for attacks. A Taekwondo training center in Mogadishu is giving self-defense classes free of charge. The classes give women not only the skill needed to fend off attackers, but the confidence as well. The initiative is receiving praise. However, some unfortunately believe that not much can be done to protect them from violence. For more on these and other stories, please visit our website, telesurutv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Regan Devines. Have a safe and productive day. And we end our show today remembering Uruguayan writer Eduardo Galeano, who would have turned 75 years today.